The air in the room was heavy, thick with something unspoken. A single flickering light bulb buzzed overhead, casting erratic shadows against the peeling wallpaper. The door clicked shut behind me, the sound too final, too deliberate. I wasn't sure who had closed it, but now, the three of us were alone. My stepbrother, Ryan, stood by the window, his fingers tapping idly against the glass. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at Nathan, either, who sat in the only chair in the room, his posture too relaxed, too calculated. A smirk played on Nathan's lips, one that made my stomach tighten. Something was wrong. No one spoke. A distant sound of a car passing outside barely pierced the thick silence. The clock on the wall ticked, each second stretching too long. Ryan finally exhaled sharply, his fingers curling into a fist against the windowpane. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. Nathan chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Is it?" His voice was smooth, but there was an edge underneath, something razor-sharp lurking beneath the surface. I took a step forward, my pulse thrumming in my ears. "Why are we here?" My voice sounded small, almost swallowed by the tension pressing in from all sides. Nathan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "I was going to ask you the same thing." A chill ran down my spine. He was playing a game, one I didn't understand yet. My eyes flickered to Ryan, but he was staring out into the dark street, jaw clenched. Nathan shifted, his smirk fading. "It's funny," he murmured, "how little we actually know about each other." I swallowed. "What are you talking about?" Ryan finally turned, his blue eyes dark, unreadable. "Maybe you should tell us." A drop of sweat slid down my back. The room felt smaller now, suffocating. "Tell you what?" Nathan tilted his head. "You know exactly what." The light flickered again, and in that moment, I realized this wasn't a conversation. It was an interrogation. And I had no idea what I was being accused of. I never asked for this family. But then again, neither did they. When my mom remarried, it wasn't some grand love story. It was practical. Necessary. A decision made between two people who had lost too much and figured that maybe, together, they'd lose a little less. And in the process, they threw the three of us, me, Ryan, and Nathan, into the same house, the same life, expecting us to just make it work. Ryan is the older one, by 2 years. The responsible one, the quiet one. He doesn't like conflict, but he doesn't avoid it either. He just watches, waits, like he's always calculating the safest move. He gets good grades, does what he's supposed to, but there's something restless in him. Something that makes him stare out of windows like he's planning an escape. Nathan, on the other hand, thrives in chaos. If Ryan is a slow-burning fire, Nathan is gasoline waiting for a match. He has this way of smiling at you that makes you question if he's joking or if he's about to ruin your life just for fun. He's charming, but only when he wants to be. Dangerous, but never in a way you can prove. And when he looks at me, I never know if he sees a brother, a rival, or just another person to manipulate. Then there's me. The outsider. The one caught between them. I was used to being alone before they came along, and some days, I still am. I don't fit into their rhythm, their unspoken understanding. They've had years to build something between them: resentment, loyalty, secrets. I only got thrown in at the last second. We're not a family. Not really. We're just three people stuck in the same house, pretending. But pretending only works for so long. Because families are supposed to trust each other. And the three of us, we don't. Not even a little. It started with a locked door. Not mine, not Ryan's, Nathan's. Nathan never locked his door. He liked to keep things open, let people see just enough to be curious, but never enough to actually know anything. His room was usually a mess, clothes scattered, papers on the desk, his phone always face down but never hidden. He never cared who walked in. If anything, he liked an audience. But tonight, his door was locked. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was on a call. Maybe he was messing with someone, playing one of his little games. But then I saw Ryan, standing at the end of the hall, staring at that door with a look I couldn't quite place. Not anger. Not suspicion. Something closer to understanding. Ryan noticed me watching and looked away fast. Too fast. That was the first thing. The second thing was the text message. I wasn't supposed to see it. It was just a glimpse, a flash of blue light when Ryan's phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I wouldn't have paid attention if I hadn't seen my name. Does he know? That was all it said. No contact name. No context. Just those 3 words. Does who know what? Ryan walked in a second later and saw me near his phone. He didn't grab it right away. He didn't even move. He just stood there, looking at me, then at the screen. His jaw tightened, and in that tiny moment, something shifted between us. I wasn't supposed to see that. And now he knew that I had. The third thing was the silence. Our house was never really quiet. Someone was always moving, something was always happening. A TV murmuring in the background, water running in the kitchen, Nathan making noise just for the sake of it. But that night, it was different. The house felt still, like it was waiting. Even at dinner, it was like someone had sucked the air out of the room. Mom and her husband made their usual small talk, but it felt forced, as if even they could sense it, whatever it was. Ryan barely spoke. Nathan smiled too much. I picked at my food, waiting for someone to acknowledge it, to say something, but no one did. And then, finally, the last thing. I heard them talking. It was late. I was walking past the living room when I caught their voices, Ryan and Nathan, low and urgent. I couldn't hear everything, just bits and pieces. You shouldn't have. He had to find out sooner or later. A pause. That's not how this works. Nathan laughed. Quiet. Amused. Who says? I stepped closer, heart pounding. My foot creaked against the floorboard, and in an instant, the conversation stopped. A long silence stretched through the house, and then, "Come here," Nathan called, voice smooth, too smooth. I didn't move. Another pause. Then, the sound of someone standing. Footsteps. Coming toward me. I turned and walked away before they could reach me, before I could hear whatever they had been about to say. I didn't know what was happening, not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. Something wasn't right. The truth didn't come crashing down all at once. It crept in, piece by piece, like a slow, suffocating fog, until suddenly there was no air left to breathe. It started with a laugh. Not just any laugh, their laugh. The one I knew better than my own, the one I had memorized in late-night conversations, in whispered jokes that belonged to just us. It was warm, familiar, intimate in a way that turned my stomach inside out. And it was coming from behind Nathan's door. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. They didn't expect me. That was their mistake. I don't remember walking toward the door. My feet moved on their own, my hands curling into fists at my sides. The laugh died down, replaced by a low murmur. A voice. Nathan's. Soft. Teasing. Too close. I didn't knock. I didn't hesitate. I turned the handle, and when it didn't budge, I stepped back and kicked. The door slammed open, cracking against the wall. And there they were. My partner, my person sitting too close, their head tilted toward Nathan's in a way that left no room for doubt. Nathan, leaning in, smiling that slow, knowing smile, the one that had always been a warning, a promise of trouble. Their bodies tensed as they turned to me, shock flashing across their faces for a fraction of a second before it was replaced by something worse. Guilt. My stomach dropped. The world didn't explode. It didn't shatter into a million jagged pieces. It just stopped. The silence was deafening. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, my breath coming too fast, too sharp. My partner's mouth opened, but no words came out. Nathan, on the other hand, didn't miss a beat. "You're early," he said, like this was nothing. Like I had walked in on him doing laundry, not tearing my world apart. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My eyes flicked between them, searching for something, an explanation, a reason, a lie that could make this hurt less. I started, but my voice cracked, and I hated that. Hated how weak I sounded. I swallowed hard and tried again. "How long?" Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair, as if this was merely inconvenient for him. "Does it matter?" My partner flinched, eyes darting to me, desperation in their gaze. "It wasn't." "Don't," I cut them off, my voice sharper than I expected. "Don't you dare." Their lips pressed together, guilt turning into something else, defensiveness. Like I was the one making this difficult. Like I had done something wrong. Nathan, always the performer, leaned back against his bed, watching me like I was the most interesting thing in the room. "You should calm down," he said smoothly, "before you say something you'll regret." That did it. The rage hit me all at once, surging up from the pit of my stomach, burning through my veins. I lunged at him before I even made the decision to. My fist connected with his jaw, and the impact sent him sprawling back against the bed. My knuckles throbbed, but I didn't care. Nathan let out a low chuckle, wiping his mouth. A thin trickle of blood smeared across his fingertips. He looked up at me with something twisted in his expression, amusement, maybe, or triumph. "You always were slow to catch on," he murmured. I turned to my partner, my chest heaving. "Was this fun for you?" My voice was raw now, stripped of anything but pain. "Sneaking around? Lying to my face?" Their eyes were glassy, red-rimmed, but I didn't care. I didn't care how sorry they looked, how their hands trembled. "Please," they whispered, reaching for me. I stepped back. Nathan sat up, stretching like he was bored. "I mean, if it helps, it wasn't personal." I turned on him so fast he barely had time to react before I grabbed him by the collar. He didn't fight back. He just smirked. "Say it again," I dared, my voice shaking. "Say it wasn't personal." Nathan held my gaze, and for the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not fear. Not regret. Something deeper. He didn't say it again. But he didn't have to. Because in that moment, I realized the truth. This wasn't about love. It wasn't even about them. This was about me. Nathan had done this because it was me. Because it was the one thing he knew would break me. And he had won. The room was still spinning from the weight of it all. Nathan sitting there, smirking despite the blood on his lip. My partner standing frozen, their outstretched hand trembling, their face twisted in something I couldn't bring myself to care about anymore. The betrayal had already settled in my bones, thick and suffocating. But just as the rage was beginning to settle into something dull and broken, Ryan spoke. "You should have told him," he said. His voice was quiet, but it sliced through the air like a blade. I turned slowly, blinking as if I had misheard him. Ryan stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. His arms were crossed, his jaw tight. "What?" My voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. Nathan chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, there it is." Ryan ignored him, his gaze locked onto mine. "You should have known," he said, and it felt like he was speaking more to himself than to me. A strange, sickening realization curled in my stomach. "You knew." Ryan didn't look away. The world shifted under my feet. The betrayal from my partner had felt like a knife to the chest, but this was something else entirely. "How long?" My voice wavered, and I hated it. Ryan exhaled through his nose, his fingers tightening around his arms. "A while." The words hit like a punch to the gut. A while. Not a day, not a week. A while. The room blurred at the edges. I couldn't breathe. Nathan, of course, was enjoying every second of it. Poor Ryan, he mused. Always caught in the middle, never quite knowing where to place his loyalty. Ryan's head snapped toward him. "Shut up, Nathan." I stepped forward, hands shaking, not with anger but with something deeper. "You let me sit at the same table with them. You let me talk about them like nothing was wrong. My breath hitched. You let me be the only one who didn't know." Ryan's face twisted, and for the first time, I saw something close to shame in his eyes. "It wasn't my place." "It wasn't your place." My voice cracked. "You're my brother." That word felt foreign in my mouth now. Brother. Did that word even mean anything anymore? I could feel memories shifting in my mind, past moments rearranging themselves into something I hadn't seen before. Ryan lingering in doorways when I talked about my partner, his lips pressed into a thin line. The way his eyes would dart away whenever Nathan made some offhand joke I didn't understand. The tension that had been there for months, something unspoken always hanging in the air whenever we were all in the same room. And then, a flashback that nearly brought me to my knees. A month ago. Late at night. I had walked into the kitchen and found Ryan sitting at the counter, staring at his phone. He had looked up when I entered, his face unreadable. "Everything okay?" I had asked. He had hesitated, just for a second. Then, he had forced a small smile and nodded. "Yeah. Just thinking." I hadn't thought anything of it at the time. I had no reason to. Now, I knew better. Now, I knew he had been debating whether to tell me. Now, I knew he had already decided against it. I laughed, but it came out hollow. "You just stood there and watched." Ryan's fists clenched at his sides. "It wasn't that simple." Nathan scoffed. "Oh, come on. It was exactly that simple. You didn't tell him because you were too much of a coward to get involved." Ryan turned on him, his voice sharp. "You don't get to talk about loyalty, Nathan." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Because I think I understand it better than you do." Something flickered between them, something I didn't understand. I shook my head, trying to clear it. "Why, Ryan?" I whispered. "Why wouldn't you tell me?" His shoulders dropped slightly, like he had been holding up a weight for too long. "Because I knew it wouldn't change anything." I let out a breath, sharp and uneven. "It would have changed everything." Ryan flinched, but he didn't argue. Nathan stretched lazily, tilting his head toward Ryan. "Tell him the rest," he said, his smirk returning. "Go on. Since we're all being honest now." Ryan's jaw clenched. "Shut up, Nathan." Nathan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "No, I think he should know why you really kept your mouth shut." Ryan stayed silent. But I had already seen the answer written across his face. It wasn't just guilt. It was something worse. And suddenly, I knew. I knew what Nathan was about to say before the words even left his mouth. Ryan hadn't just known about the affair. He had covered for them. I staggered back a step, shaking my head. "No." Ryan finally looked at me, and the devastation in his eyes confirmed it. "I'm sorry," he said. But sorry wasn't enough. Not when he had held the knife in my back this whole time. Not when he had watched me bleed. I didn't remember moving, didn't remember making the decision to, but suddenly I was shoving Ryan back against the wall. Hard. He barely had time to react before his back hit the plaster with a dull thud. His hands shot up, gripping my wrists, not to fight me off, but just to hold me there, to keep me from doing worse. "You lied to me." My voice wasn't even my own. It was something raw, something guttural, something pulled from the deepest part of me. Ryan's eyes flashed, his breath sharp. "I didn't lie." My grip tightened, my whole body trembling. "You knew." "That's the same thing." Nathan let out a low whistle from the side. "Well, this is getting fun." "Shut up, Nathan," I snapped, my voice shaking. Nathan grinned, but there was something sharper underneath it, something almost satisfied. "Don't blame me for this, you were just too blind to see it." I turned back to Ryan, my pulse pounding in my skull. "How long?" Ryan swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. His grip on my wrists loosened slightly, but I didn't let go. "A few months." The air rushed out of my lungs like I had been punched. "A few months." A few months of sitting next to me at dinner, of listening to me talk about my partner, of looking me in the eye while he carried the weight of their betrayal in his silence. I let go of him abruptly, shoving him away like the touch of him burned. Ryan caught himself, but he didn't move toward me. Didn't say anything. Nathan leaned back, his smirk widening. "Damn, Ryan, even I thought you'd crack before now." Ryan shot him a glare, his breathing uneven. "Don't pretend you didn't enjoy every second of this." Nathan shrugged. "I never said I didn't." My partner was still frozen in place, their face pale, their mouth opening and closing like they wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. I turned to them, and the weight of their betrayal hit all over again. "You too," I said, my voice quieter now, but somehow sharper. Their breath hitched. "Please, I never wanted it to happen like this." "Like this," I repeated, a bitter laugh slipping out. "So what was the plan, then? Just keep sneaking around, keep lying to me?" Tears welled in their eyes. "I made a mistake." "A mistake," I echoed, and suddenly my hands were shaking with something I couldn't contain. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something you don't mean. This was a choice, you chose him." Their face crumpled, but I didn't care. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, pacing now, his body wound so tight it looked like he might snap. I should have told you, I should have done something sooner. I turned to him, my chest burning. But you didn't. Ryan's hands curled into fists at his sides. Because I knew it wouldn't matter. Something cold slithered down my spine. What the hell does that mean? Ryan exhaled sharply, shaking his head. I mean, what would you have done if I told you walked away, cut them both out? Yes, I spat. Obviously. He laughed, but it was hollow, bitter. No, you wouldn't have. You would have looked for a reason to forgive them. You always do. The words landed like a slap, and I hated that part of me knew he wasn't wrong. Nathan stretched, cracking his neck. Well, this has been entertaining, but I think we all knew it would end like this. Like what? I turned on him now, my blood boiling. With you getting exactly what you wanted. Nathan met my gaze, completely unfazed. You're acting like I plotted this from the start. Didn't you? He smirked. Maybe. I moved toward him before I could stop myself, but Ryan was between us in an instant, shoving me back. Stop. Get out of my way, Ryan. No. I tried to push past him, but Ryan grabbed my arms, holding me back. Not rough, but firm. You're not going to fix this by throwing punches. I don't want to fix it, I yelled, my voice cracking. I just want to hurt him like he hurt me. Nathan tilted his head. If it helps, you already have, not physically but emotionally. Oh, I'm wrecked. I saw red. I tore free of Ryan's grip and swung. Nathan saw it coming this time, but he didn't move. Didn't dodge. Just let my fist connect with his jaw, his head snapping to the side. A second passed. Then, he straightened, wiping his mouth. Nice hit. I hated him. I hated all of them. Ryan's breathing was heavy beside me. My partner was crying now, silent, useless tears. Nathan just stood there, shaking out his jaw, still smiling. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was exhausted. Done. I turned away, my body shaking. I need to get out of here. My partner took a hesitant step forward. Please, can we just talk about this? I looked at them, really looked at them. And I felt nothing. No. Nathan chuckled. That's the first smart thing you've said all night. I ignored him. I looked at Ryan one last time, searching for something, but whatever connection we'd once had been severed, cut clean through. I walked past them all, out the door, into the night air. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Everything that had mattered was already gone. I thought leaving would bring me peace. That stepping away from the wreckage would mean I could finally breathe again. But betrayal doesn't stay behind closed doors. It follows. It lingers. It festers. For days, I replayed everything in my head. The lies. The glances. The way Ryan had looked at me like he was carrying the weight of something too heavy to name. The way Nathan had smirked like he had won, even as blood trickled from his mouth. The way my partner had cried, but never once said they loved me. I told myself I didn't care anymore. That I was done. Then Ryan showed up at my door. His eyes were tired, dark circles etched beneath them like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't ask to come in. Just stood there, shifting from foot to foot, like he wasn't sure if he even had the right to be here. I almost shut the door in his face. But something about the way he looked at me defeated, wrecked, made me pause. I crossed my arms. What do you want? Ryan swallowed. You were right. The words hit harder than I expected. About what? He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Everything. I leaned against the doorframe, arms still crossed. I don't need your apology. It's not an apology. He hesitated, then met my gaze. It's the truth, the whole truth. A part of me didn't want to hear it. I had already been gutted once. I wasn't sure I could take another cut. But another part of me, the part that still wanted to understand, stayed silent. Ryan let out a breath, looking away. I thought I was protecting you, but I was protecting myself. I waited. Ryan's fingers curled into fists at his sides. I wasn't just covering for them, I was covering for me too. Something cold slithered down my spine. Nathan wasn't the only one they were with. The words hung in the air, and suddenly, everything tilted. My partner hadn't just betrayed me with Nathan. They had been with Ryan too. My stomach lurched.
No.
Ryan's face twisted, his voice thick with something close to disgust. I didn't know at first, not until it was too late. The flashbacks came fast, brutal, ripping through my mind like a storm. The hesitation in Ryan's voice whenever I talked about my partner. The text message I had glimpsed weeks ago, "Does he know?" I had thought Ryan was protecting Nathan's secret. But he had been protecting his own. Ryan swallowed hard. I ended it a long time ago, but Nathan didn't, and when I found out, he exhaled sharply. I thought if I kept quiet, it would stay contained, that maybe I could fix it before you ever had to find out. A hollow laugh slipped out before I could stop it. And yet here we are. Ryan flinched. Something else clicked then. They played you too, I realized. Just like they played me. Ryan's jaw tightened. And just like that, the last missing piece fell into place. My partner had been manipulating all of us. The glances, the careful words, the well-placed tears. They had never been caught between me and Nathan. They had never even been caught between Ryan and Nathan. They had been controlling everything. They had gotten Ryan to stay silent. They had gotten Nathan to push me away. And all the while, I had been left in the dark, believing I was the only one being deceived. I felt sick. Ryan's voice was barely above a whisper. I loved them too. I let out a slow breath. And look where that got us. Silence stretched between us. Ryan swallowed, his hands still shaking. What do we do now? I almost laughed. But there was no humor left in me. We walk away. Ryan nodded once, slowly. He turned, heading down the steps, but before he reached the bottom, he paused. For what it's worth, he said, voice quiet, I really am sorry. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure if I even believed in the word anymore. When he left, I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, the weight of everything pressing in. Trust, family, loyalty, all of it had shattered. And I wasn't sure any of it had ever been real in the first place. Betrayal doesn't just come from enemies. It comes from the people you trust the most, the ones you let in, the ones who know exactly where to strike so it hurts the most. But now, I have to ask, what would you have done? If you were me, standing there, watching your world unravel piece by piece, would you have fought back? Walked away? Forgiven? And what about trust? Can it ever really be rebuilt after something like this? Or once it's broken, is it gone forever? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts, your stories. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you never expected? How did you handle it? And if you think this was the end of the story, think again. Because there's one last thing I found out after I left, one more truth that changed everything. If you want to hear that part, make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Because sometimes, the real betrayal isn't what you think it is. It's worse.